Still looking. We still looking. We still looking for our freedom. What is freedom? What does it mean? Still looking for your freedom. What is freedom? Can you be free if you are dependent on another tribe for your sustainability? If you have to depend on anyone else outside of your creator Hawa only, are you free? And we search for a kingdom of freedom, man. Love to my street familiar, RaRa the Great one, otherwise known as Rashim the Dream. Love to you, man. Big bro. Street fan, man. I mean, I just really appreciate my street fan. Me and RaRa, man, been shoulder to shoulder, man, since we was like 14, 15 years old in the streets of L.A. C. Arson's finest. Love to D. Will. All the family, man. Rest in power, Chris, man. Rest in power, man. Man, love to y'all, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all make it, you know, the real manifestation, man. This is a wave we've been vibing and surfing for a long time, man. And we come a long way. We all come a long way. So they call it a conscious revolution. They call it an awakening. We call it reality. And we're still looking for reality. Y'all check out RaRa, man. Chess extraordinaire. Has a wonderful chess academy, man. Always has major chess competitions, you know what I mean, for the young ones. They do a big program every year, man, at USC. All the children, man, from all the schools coming in and learning the game of kings, man. If you can learn the game of kings, chess at a young age, learn strategy, how to be a few moves ahead, man. Use that brain, empower that brain, keep that brain connecting and sparking, man. I mean, this brother does a lot with schools. He's the one that really inspired me to take the frequency of learning, man, to the classroom. So, love to RaRa, Rashim, the Dream, my family. And, yeah, he just dropped this on me, man. Yeah, Chess Tutors. Yeah, that's what I meant to tell y'all. ChessTutors.org. Y'all check out ChessTutors.org to get up on the drop with RaRa the Great. All right, so, yeah, man, y'all are going to dig on this. We're going to really see what freedom is, what this off-grid is really talking about. And it's so great to be walking into our reality, you know what I'm saying, and having the land. We know we're walking into 10 acres. We know we're trying to learn as much as we can, but we really want to know first before we step on our land and form a community. What is freedom and why do you do it? Do you do it just to be cool? Do you do it just to feel like you part of something? Or do you truly do it for the definition of freedom? I mean, so as always, man, it's fair use and they caboose bone. We just over here researching and teaching and using some scholarship, doing some criticisms and commenting. And we're still looking for freedom. We're still looking for reality. Y'all still looking with me? Let go. What's the drop?
Yes, I'm talking about a nonviolent revolution of consciousness.
Everyone comes to a point in life in which we reflect upon those things that matter. There are some who choose to ignore the depth of this question, and there are others who follow this question into oblivion. Is it possible to walk the middle path, to ask these questions and yet embrace the possibility of never arriving at an answer? Is it possible to live our lives not in the absence of a corrupt world, but despite it? If you were asked to ponder the one thing that matters most in your life, what would it be? Security? Money? Success? Sex? Power? Have you ever considered why? Why we crave? Do we not have enough? What happens when we have all the money, all the security, all the success, sex, power, but haven't found peace? What happens if we gain the world without an ounce of love or appreciation? We end up only wanting more. The world can't give enough of itself, as if humanity is becoming a black hole devouring everything in its path. When we receive these things, our first instinct is to protect them from others. We distrust our neighbors because of them. We wage war to gain more of them. However, love is distinct from these. When love is present, our first instinct is to give back, to help those who long to truly be free, those who desire to give back, who desire to know love. But what happens if no one truly wants love anymore? What if no one desired freedom? What if the greatest epidemic known to man has already infected the entire species? A whole race of humanity, conned into believing that slavery is freedom, that fear is love, that suffering is happiness. Would you be able to recognize it if it were happening right now? Ask yourself, is it? Is this the world we live in?
You ain't got nothing to live for, you're better off dead.
Yes, but what if a man has got something to live for?
That's different. Then nothing should stand in his way.
Anybody want to take a stab at answering that question? What is freedom? Well, let's take a look at the Oxford definition. The power or right to act, speak, or think freely, the state of being free. But that's kind of mechanical. I really don't like that definition. So what I did is I said, okay, well, what's the definition of a slave? A person who is a legal property of another and is forced to obey them, or a person who is excessively dependent upon or controlled by something. Okay? So if you're dependent on something, are you free?
No.
No. If you're controlled by something, are you free?
No.
No. So if we want to be free, then maybe we need to get rid of our dependencies and the controls in our life.
Rob, in the Paget family, is an example of what happens when an average individual begins asking simple questions. Rob has removed himself from under external government and jurisdiction. No officer of the law, judge or magistrate, politician or tax agent has authority over his life simply due to a title. The land on which he lives is treated with respect and appreciation. He has drafted his own Declaration of Independence and his own Constitution. He has truly broken the bonds that fetter so many of us to dependency and dogma. However, to do this, far more than physical barriers had to be destroyed. Upon Rob's realization that he is truly becoming free, an inevitable realization of responsibility presented itself. When excessive dependence upon something is recognized within, the heart and mind revolt. The initiation of an authentic revolution always begins within the individual. Pay attention not to the physical steps he took to become free, but to the spirit of his path. For it is a personal path within all of us. If we mimic the path of another, it is not a true path for us, but a trap. This is merely a story of an individual I love and respect, the story of how a true revolution is born.
With self-governance, I am 100% responsible and 100% accountable for everything that I say and do. And that's what kind of led to us building the airship and to building a power system and living off-grid. But when we talk about off-grid, it's not just the power grid that we're talking about. there's also the corporate grid. And so myself personally, I've, gotten rid of the mortgage, credit cards, loans, bank accounts. I don't have any of those kind of things anymore. So I'm off of the financial grid and I'm off the corporate grid as much as possible as well. If I started like growing our own food, generating our own power, then we're not susceptible to disruptions in the grid should there be a failure. And because of its complexity, the probability of that happening is increasing over time.
The complexity of the system is a direct reflection of the amount of burden that the people are placing upon the system. Every government would have to grow if you keep placing more burden upon it. All of that burden is actually the responsibility that we no longer, as the citizens, want to take care of on our own anymore. We want our government to take care of it for us. So all of that burden feeds the system, and that's how the system grows. If a system is becoming faulty, if a system is becoming corrupt, that's because the foundation or the soil that that system has grown out of has become faulty and has become corrupt. So that's the first place that we need to start looking, is the foundation, the soil that this system grew out of. We need to start looking at the people.
There's a fellow down in the U.S., Taos, New Mexico. He's an architect. What he's doing is he's building earth-rammed houses, which are passively solar heated, out of automobile tires. And you stack the tires like bricks, pack them full of dirt, and they're backfilled, and they're completely off-grid. The sun heats the dirt and the mass, and that heat then radiates back into the house. And then in the wintertime, because the sun is so low, it penetrates deep into the building to warm up the building, and in summertime it's really high, so it doesn't penetrate the building at all and keeps the building cool. Wow. And collect water off the roof into cisterns, and we recycle water in the house, and solar panels for power generation. So the house essentially is like a self-contained ecosystem because it collects its own water, treats its own waste, generates its own power, generates its own heat. And it's all built out of recycled materials that are abundant out in our ecology. There's automobile tires all over the place, right? So wow. We're trying to build houses out of materials that you can find readily laying around. My wife is studying to be a homeopath at the time, and she started recognizing that there are a few things that are going on in the medical industry that isn't necessarily good for us. And through the process of learning about some of the medical issues that we were learning through Carrie's education, it started to wake us up to some of the other things going on in our economy and in our political system and that kind of stuff. It's not a healthcare system, but a keep you sick system so that they can make lots of money through pharmaceuticals. I held on to crap in my life, and whether it's emotional or mental, and my body had a real hard time dealing with it. I've since learned that it's holding on to that stuff is what causes cancer and all kinds of illnesses and distress on the physical body. So we decided to take our matters into our own hands and be responsible rather than react to what was going on. We decided to be proactive. And so we came out while the economy was at its hottest, and we sold everything, came out here. That all stemmed really from some of the things that Carrie was bringing back from her studying, and she brought this term natural person back from school and said, "Hey Rob, have you heard of this?" No. So I started looking into it and realizing that there's this huge deception going on in the political arena, well, and the medical arena and the economy and all that kind of stuff too. But my initial reaction was I was extremely angry and upset. How dare they do this? You know, they're supposed to be there to protect us and guide us and help us, not manipulate us. And that's kind of started my road towards trying to understand their system and learn what human rights is all about and what freedom is all about. What is the law? What laws apply to every single man on this earth? Because they often say no man is above the law. Okay, so which law are they talking about then?
Wow.
Well, there's common law, there's civil law, there's contract law, there's Sharia law, there's Christian law, like there's all kinds of laws. Admiralty is just one of them. And when it comes down to it, a lot of those are only associated to activities depending on what we're doing and what we consent to. So corporations, for example, are all subject to a number of laws because they are the creation of the government. So the master gives the rules for the servant to follow. Okay. So does that apply to you? Well, unless you're a corporation or you're behaving as a corporation, the answer is no. So I ask the question, what is the law?
The history of law gives us an understanding of its evolution, which is intimately linked to the evolution of our species. The function of law does not simply govern our physical actions. We have many layers of existence, including physical, mental, emotional, conscious, and spiritual. Because we cannot escape any of these, an affliction to one of them reverberates in consequence between all of them. It is irresponsible to assume that law pertains only to portions of our lives. Law is the very foundation of life itself. All law forms today are based upon our consent. Should the people of today discover the important truth that we can say no at any time, we may find a revolution within the current system to be inevitable. Everything we are experiencing is the evolution of experience itself. This is why I can't say what the future should look like. The second I give a model for the future, there will instantly appear a rebellion against that model. And that rebellion is very important because the future is not about ending up with a beautiful result. It's about learning from the process and allowing that process to always welcome change. There are three fundamental stages to our evolution: childhood, adulthood, and parenthood or leadership. A child is typified by being dependent upon external support for food, protection, and health. In the animal kingdom, the transition from childhood to adulthood is complete when the child is no longer dependent upon others to be fed, protected, and kept in good health. We are a species of perpetual children today in our society. And as easy as it would be to blame the political, economic, and societal system that breeds dependent people, it is an inescapable truth that the entire system is a reflection of the condition of its people. Seldom do we see adults today in the sense that they can govern themselves, which means it is even less frequent that we see individuals fit for parenthood or leadership. The stage of parenthood and leadership comes when not only can we govern ourselves, but when we are ready and willing to help others become self-governing. The leaders of today are unfortunately nothing more than children with adult bodies wearing leadership clothes. Our entire species is being faced with a choice: govern the self or be governed by others.
Problem with courts these days that I see is that people don't see them for what they really are. I was raised to respect authority, follow authority, and do as they say. And I think most people are brought up that way. What I've learned, though, is that authority is based 100% on our consent to being governed. And I found a Supreme Court ruling that says that the consent of the governed is a foundational principle of democracy. Now, what's consent? Does that imply that you have a choice whether you're going to agree to that or not? And I would suggest that the answer is yes. So we all have free will choice to consent to being governed. When we do that, then we've given them permission to use their authority over us. So when we used our free will to apply for or register for something, we gave them permission to create a corporation to interact between the man and the system. And it's that corporation that the system acts upon. But because we don't know who we are, we assume or we think that that is us. So when you take a look at your credit card or take a look at your driver's license or your birth certificate or any of that kind of stuff, a lot of people, and including myself, thought that that was actually me. And that's not true. So when the courts are acting upon it, all they can really act upon is the corporation. And the only reason they can act upon the man is because we agree to be the representative of that corporation and bind ourselves to the terms and conditions of that agreement. But we can say no at any time.
You can say no at any time. Turn the switch off. Now there's a mountain of fear that's been instilled in your head that doesn't exist. It's the illusion. And you say, but if I say no, they'll do this. And if I say no, they'll do that. I can't, give anyone personal advice on when to say this and when to say that. But if we say no, it's game over. You can be in your personal all you want to, but there is no separation between me, you, and the next sister or brother. If we say no, that's what you have to finish that sentence. Not if I and if I. If we. That's your power. Let me get that last minute back. So much drop was dropped. Get your rain boots. RaRa the Great. Got to drop. Let go.
So when we used our free will to apply for or register for something, we gave them permission to create a corporation to interact between the man and the system.
So when you, out of your free will, register for something and put paperwork in with these people, then you give them permission and consent to enslave you. You're not freeing yourself, you're enslaving yourself with your consent. Because you could have just said, no, I'm not. This is what I am. And when they say, by what proof and evidence, you say, my creator. And your creator says, when has that not been enough to make a deal with these devils?
To agree to that or not?
Agree.
And I would suggest that the answer is yes.
Consent.
So we all have free will choice to consent to being governed. When we do that, then we've given them permission to use their authority over us. So when we used our free will to apply for or register for something, we gave them permission to create a corporation to interact between the man and the system. And it's that corporation that the system acts upon. But because we don't know who we are, we assume or we think that that is us.
We think that's us because we don't know who we are. We think that box to check is us because you don't know who you are. You think that title is you because you don't know who you are.
Take a look at your credit card or take a look at your driver's license or your birth certificate or any of that kind of stuff. A lot of people, and including myself, thought that that was actually me. And that's not true. So when the courts are acting upon it, all they can really act upon is the corporation. And the only reason they can act upon the man is because we agree to be the representative of that corporation and bind ourselves to the terms and conditions of that agreement. But we can say no at any time.
No.
Give the public the facts. They have a right to know. Got it?
If you have those documents, such as licenses, registrations, permits, applications, that is your consent to being governed by certain guidelines, regulations, acts, stipulations, laws within that corporation, because you are asking for a service and they're saying, okay, as long as you follow these rules. If you sign any of those contracts which are represented by a legal fiction set up in your name, then you yourself are bound by those rules, bound by those regulations, because you did that. You consented to being governed by that. So in order to remove yourself from that, you have to dissolve those contracts. Sometimes they make it seem mandatory that you must comply, and it's just the language that's being used. That's one thing you want to become very wary of, is the language that they use.
To ask you, how do you define person? What would the normal definition of in our community be for that word, human being? And if we take a look at the dictionary, it says a human being regarded as an individual. That's what we would normally view the word person to be. In law, okay, now we're using their words. Whenever you're dealing with corporations and the government and all that kind of stuff, person means an individual or incorporated group having certain legal rights and responsibilities. Not a human being regarded as an individual, but as an individual or corporation. So they actually said, compare artificial person and natural person. So I did. So I looked it up and I compared them. Artificial person, a legal entity, not a human being. Natural person. A natural person is a human being that has the capacity for rights and duties. Just because you have the capacity doesn't mean that you're going to use your free will to exercise them.
Wow.
You have the capacity for rights and duties, but it's up to you to exercise them.
Wow. Natural.
I actually found the legal dictionary that they use in the U.S. So every time they argue about the definition of a word, yeah, it's a volume that's as long as my arms of books. So by curiosity, I looked up the word person. And on each page, there was probably, I would estimate, about 15 different definitions with each court case. And the word person ran for around 200, 250 pages. So there was literally thousands of different definitions for the word person. How can anybody possibly learn all that in order to protect yourself? Well, part of the Magna Carta states that to none will we sell or deny a right or a justice. Well, what that means is that if you want to exercise your rights and you want to have justice, they can't sell it to you.
Wow.
They sure do now. It costs you hundreds of dollars an hour to hire a lawyer just so you can get justice.
Ain't that the truth?
Sometimes there are things that are more important than bread and butter. Just what, for instance? The right to think for yourself. This is a free country. where nobody can set themselves up as absolute ruler and force other people to do their bidding. And as our country grows, more and more you'll find men and women marching and fighting side by side.
So at the revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, and they are truly the sovereigns of the country. But they are sovereigns without subjects, with none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens. And this was a U.S. case in, what's the year, 1793. So every U.S. individual is sovereign if they knew about it and if they haven't got hooked into the corporate game that's being played out.
Corporate game.
So, a sovereign, a person, body, or state vested with independent and supreme authority. So, if you're sovereign, does that mean that somebody else has authority over you? No. You have the supreme authority.
And if you're sovereign and have supreme authority, then can anybody else tell you who you are? By registering to another power, does that tell you who you are and give you sovereignty and power to claim a title? Does it make you sovereign or a slave?
What about an officer of the law?
They have no authority over you. They're your servants, okay? But what they do is they try to get you into a contract so that you contract away your rights so that they then have authority over you. Asking for a driver's license, insurance, and registration. If you give it to them, that's a contract.
Wow.
You then gave them authority.
Now, we know how this shit works because they don't hire people that are that just sometimes. So sometimes you can say, yeah, well, I have authority not to give you this, and then you end up with a car full of bullets if you from the streets where we from. So now you're in, sort of a here or there. What do I do? And that's been a scenario in the quandary, in the quagmire of our people. That's been our trap and our snare. What do you do? Because the people that are ruling you are not just ruling with disillusion alone. They're ruling with the gun. They're ruling by force. They're not just tricking you. They're also putting you down in the streets, cowboys and Indians. Now you go and research the original wars of this country up until what? The late 1800s, and you got nothing but Indian wars, so-called. People that they're putting under this corporate status of Indian. Not who they are, their titles. Their titles. Their sovereignty. But yeah, it's good to know that this is a contract. So they're giving you a contract question as soon as they roll up on you.
Then they can do whatever they want to.
And they can do whatever they want. Sovereign or slave.
We elected to take responsibility and accountability for anything that should happen. As we should, because it's our building. And we're building it. So we essentially went ahead with it and waited for the county to say something. About 3-4 months into the project, we received a letter. That letter essentially indicated that we noticed that there's some development. Please stop the development until you fill in a development permit. Well, I had been studying my human rights for a couple of years at that point, so I sent them a letter essentially outlining that I am a individual, not a person or a corporation, and that you don't have jurisdiction over anything that I do, and that your letter also indicated that if I sign this, you have permission to come on our property. So that implies that you currently don't have permission to come on our property. So I essentially told them, you're going to have to provide me with the proof of your claim that I have to follow the guidelines of the Municipality Act, and they do not have permission to come onto our property.
Wow. Now that's how you use
a week later, the tax assessor showed up, and I asked him, well, are you here as an agent of the county? And he said, yes.
And it said, well, can you tell me which parts of the act that your authority comes from? And so he told me, and I said, tell you what, let me look those up and I'll get back to you. And he was quite reasonable. He agreed with that and he left without any incident. So I looked up the act and found out that he had to give me, reasonable notice. And because he was an agent, I had already told the county that they didn't have permission to come on the property. So I had grounds for several charges, if I wanted to, of trespassing and breach of the Municipality Act against this guy. So I confronted him on it. The final result was I got a letter from the minister indicating that I had several good points in my letter and that he encouraged me to settle my dispute with the county, and he essentially washed his hands of the whole thing. And I haven't heard from the county since. They've left me alone now for 2 years. I can't have freedom unless I also recognize that I have a duty. And I have a duty to share with people what I've learned from not only the legal aspect, but also the spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical freedoms that I've been working on. I felt that part of my duty was to start getting out there and start teaching this.
It's amazing, right? With freedom comes responsibility.
Yes, sir. Stand by for operation of the time machine.
Yes, sir. Where to this time, Captain?
Back to the year 1215, King John of England.
Yes, sir.
Everybody's familiar with Robin Hood. King John, the tyrant, was actually real. The problem with King John is that he did not know how to fight a war, and he had no land to his name. So he ran to the Pope in 1213 and asked Pope Innocent III for some help. And what he did is he actually turned over the whole Kingdom of England to the Pope in return for support from the Pope so that he could fight his wars. So that little document essentially turned King John into the Pope's vassal, which means that he promised to be loyal to the Pope, and the Pope then owned everything in England. A couple years later, his barons, quartered him and, stuck a knife to him and said, you know what, we're not happy with the way you're treating us. We want you to sign this Magna Carta.
But if I sign this, I shall be no king. You have given me 24 overlords.
These 24 will see that you carry out the terms of the Magna Carta. You have no choice, King John, but to sign.
So the Magna Carta was the basis of English law.
That's right, Jen. And the basis of American law as well.
Wow.
The English Magna Carta became the model for the American Bill of Rights.
This is the founding document for our human rights within our country, within Great Britain, within the United States, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, any crown colony. Their legal systems are based on this document. But he was doing it at knife point. He's under duress. Is that a legal contract? No. So I have a question. If it was under duress and this is not a legal contract, then how can they possibly continue using this document as the basis for our legal system?
Wow. Rights, violence, constraints, or other actions brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment.
I would suspect that most people would recognize that a valid contract would require that the individual sign on his own free will. And that wasn't the case. And the Pope at the time, Pope Innocent III, recognized that as such because he also said that it was invalid.
Of Europe decided, you know what, there's this huge piece of land just across the Atlantic Ocean, let's go get it. And so how they did it, though, is they chartered corporations the king set up a corporation, and it was funded by the king and bankers and that kind of stuff, and they came over and they stuck the flag into the ground and say, we claim this for the King of England, and set up shop and started dealing with the First Nations people that are here.
First Nations, that's you, so-called Negro, the copper color race found here, and they came here and set up a corporation flag that you must now give your consent to, and every time you ask them for anything, that's your consent to be a part of it. So, we all learn and we all grow, and the Most High gives us, the drop when we need to drop. What we do with it is up to us. That's our own free will.
And, I'm not going to go into all the atrocities that happened.
Literally millions of First Nations people died, either as a result of disease, wars,
they
starvation.
like to give you the hijack version. They're not giving you the copper color race. You have to do your own recon for that.
And so that genocide took place just so that they can colonize this land. It's a sad chapter in our history, but we also have to recognize that that's the past, and so let's move on and let's try to live in harmony with one another now without pushing our will against another and try to come to terms with the things that were done in the past.
It was essentially the corporation that came and conquered this country, or this land, I should say, not the country. They came and conquered this land. It was all corporations that came. Now that those corporations are here, people started coming over and started immigrating to what they thought was Canada or the United States. And then in 1867, they passed this thing called the British North America Act. Now, did the people here vote on this? No. This is a piece of legislation from Great Britain. That's all this is. The BNA Act is just legislation from the Parliament in Great Britain. But it was passed off on us as a constitutional document. In order for you to have a constitution, the people have to vote on the document, not the representatives in the legislature.
Bang.
This document merged all the colonies into one colony called Canada. That's all this document did. But it was passed off as forming a country.
The people of Great Britain went and started traveling around the world and bringing their legal system with them. And even though the U.S. declared their independence in 1776, they still based their legal system on British system. They're all based on that common law system, but there's also the Admiralty system that came with it.
Representatives from Canada, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, all those got together with Great Britain and started talking about, okay, how can we really set things up so that we can be autonomous from Great Britain? And so they actually met for a couple of years, 1926 and 1930, to formulate how this was going to work. And then the king then passed the Statute of Westminster, and that essentially broke the tie between Great Britain and Canada. Okay, the king is no longer a part of Canada. Canada is no longer affected by any statutes or regulations from Great Britain. Because the link to the crown was broken, technically we are in anarchy. We have no document to actually set up the framework for how our government is supposed to operate in this land. In 47, they wrote a letters patent creating the office of Governor General. The Governor General is the head of this country.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense established. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications.
There's not one piece of territory or one thing of a monetary nature that we want out of this war. We want peace and prosperity for the world as a whole.
Let's go through these words and let's see if you understand them now. Okay? Governor General. What's a general? Military. Lieutenant. More generals. What's a company? It's like 4 brigades of man and heavy equipment. An officer. Okay? The taxpayer is actually an officer who holds an office. Commission. How many here work for commission under a social insurance number? So you're actually a commissioned officer. Okay, so even some of the financial terms have military connotations. And it's all done under Admiralty, which is military.
You are under military occupants. You are a prisoner of war. Specifically, the copper-colored so-called Negro that was found, not the images he gave you, but the ones that was here before the land separated, the one that is described in the 1828 Webster Dictionary. The ones that think that they are Negroes, though they are tribes, that they are tribes and the seed and that which is branching out of the root. Now you're under military control, prisoners of war. 1452, dumb Diversas, Papal bull, subjugating you here and there. So he's talking about sovereignty just the same way they like to say, well, we don't want to be slaves to any crown, because they were leaving England and Europe and all the so-called black kings and queens that were ruling there, that were enslaving them there. The same Amor system, the same maritime system. Then they made their pacts and their treaties. Now you, regal Negro, you know what I'm saying, have been, the butt of it all. The recipient of everything, of all this rugged, ragged edges. You've been the recipient. You've been cut up, sliced up, and mutilated because it was for you. But why? For your destruction or for your redemption? I mean, where would you be if you were never humbled to see? Do you think you always just had to drop because you were given more? Because you were given more? Or do you think you need to earn it? I mean, a good child is that one that listens, right? And you earn it, man. You listen. Listen to the law of your sacred trees. Listen to the law of your land. What is law? It is the wave you're swimming in, but not in a LAW form, but in a vibration form. And you are it.
When you turn 18 and you start working under a social insurance number or accept a birth certificate, you're actually accepting being posted at a military post, evidenced by a name, address, and a date of birth. Because what was birthed? The vessel, right? It's a military vessel. So when you agree to be the legal representative of that military vessel, you agree to be manning that military post. Okay, that's why they need the name and birth date, so that they can prove that you're a private in their military. All of these documents, whether you're registering property or applying for driver's licenses, a birth certificate, all that kind of stuff, It's all in the public, which means it's all on the military side, and you're holding military offices when you have these documents on your possession.
Which is why they can draft you.
As long as you're manning a military post, technically you're at war. So, Clause 1 says, we do hereby constitute. Who's we? I don't remember seeing any documentation that said the people of this land gave them permission to constitute that office. And the king doesn't have any authority here because the Statute of Westminster 1931 cut off all of that. So I have a question. Who's we? I suspect that it was Prime Minister Mackenzie King and all of his cronies. So how did all this happen? This guy here, our Prime Minister, Mackenzie King, I did some reading on him. And I found out he's actually really good friends with John D. Rockefeller Jr. And he actually spent a lot of time in New York. He actually consulted with him. Mackenzie King's a lawyer, and he's actually Rockefeller's lawyer, and actually helped him out with a lot of labor disputes that are happening in the States. So who signed it? Prime Minister of Canada. So our Prime Minister signed letters patent to create the office of Governor General. They needed to set up another office, so the Prime Minister did it. And I'm really curious to find out who was supporting him to do that. Because it wasn't the people, and it wasn't the king. Even though he said by His Majesty's command. I question that too. Governor General's Act. You go to Canadian government website and you can actually look up the acts. Okay, you look up the Governor General's Act. And in there, Clause 1, or Clause 2 says, the Governor General of Canada or other Chief Executive Officer, CEO. CEOs are for companies, or administrator carrying on the Government of Canada on behalf and in the name of the sovereign, by whatever title designated is a corporation sole. Okay, a corporation sole is a corporation, except there's only one individual that holds that title or owns that corporation. Corporation soles actually are used all over the place. The Pope, the office of the Pope is a corporation sole. The office of the King is a corporation sole. The Governor General, Lieutenant Governors, the Catholic Church, all of their bishops and archbishops and cardinals, they all hold corporation souls.
Souls, instruments with which to create.
This was on the Governor General's website about 10 months ago. You won't find it now because they changed it. So I'm really glad I got a screenshot of it. But it says here, Canada is a parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy. Yeah, whatever. This means Canadians recognize the Queen as our head of state. Canada's Governor General carries out Her Majesty's duties in Canada on a daily basis and is Canada's de facto head of state. Does everybody know what de facto means? Illegitimate, but in effect.
Illegitimate, but in effect.
So it has no legitimacy, but because we've all accepted it, that gives it force and effect.
Consent.
Now, as soon as you get away from all the people and you remove yourself or segregate yourself through a private agreement or what have you, that becomes private. Now, the Governor General and the Queen, by definition, are only responsible for the public.
Government is there to deal with the public for us, but they've turned everything public. As soon as you register property like land or vehicles or any of that kind of stuff, you turn that into a registered item which is in the public.
If you're in the public, they assume that you're vulnerable and that you need protecting from others and from yourself.
As soon as you're using all of your corporations, that's all on the public side, and that's all governed by the public, which is the government.
So part of the process that I went through was to actually explicitly say, I do not want to be governed.
This is the fundamental rule of all forms of law. Without your consent, you cannot be governed. There is not a single law in existence created by man that is mandatory. There are many that give the illusion of being mandatory, but therein lies the most important aspect to all of this. It is your responsibility to investigate and understand what governs you. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, consciously, and spiritually. There are tyrannical governments that force their law upon the people unjustly. Some do not have much of a choice to move away from these areas. However, most do have a choice, yet allow justifications to keep them exactly where they are. If we were on a train track just minutes away from being hit, most of us would move, yet some have the tendency to complain about how inconvenient it is to move. There is still a choice. Human ingenuity can surmount any obstacle. The only requirement is the desire to surmount. If we are willing to complain or rebel against the system that governs our actions, we should know how and why it does so. In doing this, it is important to understand who we are, where we are, and what options we have.
What was Canada defined as? In the Interpretation Act, Canada, for greater certainty, includes the internal waters of Canada and territorial sea of Canada. Okay, now that word includes is a tricky word. There's a legal maxim that says the inclusion of one is the exclusion of all others. Okay, so whenever you see the word includes, it means it's this and nothing else. Hold on here. You're trying to tell me that Canada is just water? Yes, it is. This red, that's Canada. We, sitting in this basement, we are not in Canada.
Body bag.
Well, the term Turtle Island, my understanding, is an actual word that the First Nations people called North America. When the Europeans came over, they then started putting their own terms and words to the land. However, it was all done through corporations.
Well, that's why they need the Admiralty courts, because Canada is only water. You can't have law of the land if you have no land.
Whoa. Man, so, you see Canada. Who has the Canada? Who's the, illegitimate law-giving high priest? The Pope, the Queen, who? Now, if Canada's only water, then the Corporation of America is only water, which is why they need their Admiralty law and can't judge you on the law of the land, although it exists and pre-existed and is the first world. That's why you keep saying first world or First Nation people. Now they call it third world if you have no government, right? Which means that they are the second world, but that's not very popular. They don't like saying second world. They don't like saying second world. Although they are the second world. If they're not the First Nation, they're not the first world. Let's get a couple more minutes.
You need Admiralty courts to operate in Canada because it's all water. You need your ships. Everybody know where they fly the flag on the Parliament buildings in Ottawa? On the top of the Peace Tower. Because they don't have any land to plant their flag. You need land to plant a flag. Take a look at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. You type in the word Canada, it's listed there. Canada actually has to file with the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission every year.
The Admiralty courts are set up to govern business between corporations, not people. The jurisdiction of Admiralty courts does not deal with human affairs. Only when humans, knowingly or unknowingly, represent a corporation by using licenses, registrations, certificates, and applications do they fall under Admiralty jurisdiction. It is a well-disguised fact that nearly everything we believe to be our country, our courts, our police departments, and even the documents that represent us as individuals are in fact corporations in the business for profit. Should you choose to remain a part of any of these corporations, it's important to understand that not only are you under their jurisdiction, but you do gain the benefits that they offer. The benefits in the agreement of becoming a citizen of any country is their protection. To be a citizen of any nation means that you have your citizenship. This ship is a vessel that contains your consent to be protected and governed by that nation.
Wow, citizenship. And there's another 20 minutes to this. I know it's hot fire. I want to keep going. Love the RaRa the Great, Machine the Dream. I want to get to this 48 powers of laws, or what's it called? You know what I'm saying? A lot of people had this book on their bookshelf, man. The 48 laws of power, or powers of laws. This is a little animated joint, you know what I mean, that we can just kind of write out. And it's going to go right on with the same citizenship. Except these particular 48 laws are more ones that, I call these the hijack laws 101. Now, yeah, you can get the babies out of these, of course. But these are pretty much the dickhead laws. Dickhead USA law. Or the dickhead international law. Because you're going to see what it is, man. It's just a bunch of dickhead ass laws that say, yeah, man, that's how you really get over on somebody. Then they croak. Because they a joke. Puff of smoke. Take a toke. Hey. All right, y'all. 48 laws of power, animated. Yo, man, we just surfing the wave. Getting a little legal. Getting a little sovereign. Let's check it out.
Law number 1. Never outshine the master. Nicolas Fouquet made the mistake of appearing larger than his king, Louis XIV, and spent his remaining days incarcerated. Avoid victories over superiors. It will cost you more than it is worth. Law number 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies. Michael III of the Byzantine...
Never put trust in friends. See, these are hijack laws 101. It's got nothing to do with you and your brother and your wall of protection. This is how they function so that they get over on each other. And while you sleep, they get over on you. Because you think they're your friends, but they really frenemies. Learning how to use enemies. So they say, hey, we're friends, but you're really an enemy to them. They really think of you as an enemy. But they're learning how to use you while never putting too much trust in the friends that are genuine. Now we're talking about the Byzantine, we talking about Byzantine Israelite chronologies?
Byzantine Empire was saved from death by Basilius, who Michael in turn favored with gifts and prestige. Basilius, lusting for more power, murdered Michael out of greed.
Wow.
Instead of showing gratitude, he was insatiable. Trust from a distance. People are selfish and pursue their own interests.
So he's saying that was a good thing that he murked, oh boy. Is that a good law?
Former opponents make more loyal and stronger friends.
Wow.
Law number 3. Conceal your intentions. The Marquis de Sévigné wanted to seduce a young countess. Instead of being indirect and subtle, he exposed his true feelings for her and she lost all interest, as he blurted out that he loved her. Add a sense of unexplicable mystery to your character. Law number 4. Always say less than necessary. Law number 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. During the Second World War, Erwin Rommel was known for his superior skill in cunning and deceptive strategy. All of the opposition were demoralized and doubting their chances of success facing him. Your reputation precedes you. Build and protect it carefully.
What do you want your reputation to be? A blank screen? You want it to be some evil jerk-off, doing jerk-off things, saying jerk-off things in jerk-off ways? Do you want it to be peace and power? It is you, but see, your reputation is not your own, it is that of your creator. When you rock for your creator's reputation, yours manifests. When your creator's reputation is secure, Hawa, your existence is secure, your sovereignty is secure, your reputation manifests existence.
Law number 6. Court attention at all cost. Pablo Picasso would not allow himself to fade into the background. He would rather paint something out of the ordinary and ugly than be forgotten. All publicity is good publicity.
Wow.
Don't let yourself become one of many.
Don't be forgotten.
Law number 7. Get others to do the work for you.
Wow.
Thomas Edison wasn't much of a scientist, but a businessman. He would capitalize on Nikola Tesla's genius and garner all the credit.
Don't you see, Negro? This is about you. They came over here with these laws, their Admiralty laws and this psychology, and they said, get others to do the work for us. See? They're going to give you some bullshit example about Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla. Yeah, man, I'm all about that free energy, because I am free. Dumb. Kingdom of freedom. But getting others to do the work for you. We're not talking about teamwork make a dream work. Love to RaRa the Great, who taught me that. Teamwork makes a dream work. I can dig on that all day, all night. But just getting others to do the work for me just for the F of it. Just for the sake of it. See, that's Hijack 101. And that's their law number 7. They use that to enslave you, so-called Negro.
Hire talents capable of doing what you can't. Law number 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. When I have laid bait for deer, I don't shoot at the first doe that comes to sniff, but wait until the whole herd has gathered round. Otto von Bismarck. Force your opponent to react to your moves. Law number 9. Win through your actions, not through argument. Mucius needed strong ships. Without guarding his tongue, his engineer argued that a different type than the one Mucius preferred would be much better for conquest. Despite being right, the engineer was sentenced to death. Don't argue with authorities. Agree and suggest an alternative. Then demonstrate.
Don't argue with authorities. See, these laws are to enslave you.
Number 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. Lola Montes brought down the king of Bavaria and his whole kingdom by seducing him. Her lust for destruction and chaos was insatiable. Countless lives perished because of her nature. Cut off the fire starters. Try to help them instead and you will burn alongside them.
Ooh.
Law number 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. Otto von Bismarck led the king's hand in uniting a mighty Prussia. None other than Bismarck was able to do so. He proved himself to be an indispensable asset and had his strong position.
He's cutting them off on both sides. He's cutting off their kingdom on both sides. Learn how to keep them dependent on you. Man, sad but fair. Sad but true.
Position secured. Be the only one who can do what you do, or see yourself replaced in fear, sooner or later. Law number 12. Use selective honesty to disarm your victim. Count Victor Lustig was going to double Al Capone's $50,000. Instead of running with the money, he gave it all back to Capone, who thought he was being played by a con artist. Capone gave Lustig the $5,000 simply to help the honest man. Tell the truth to gain your opponent's trust. Be honest when expected to be dishonest, to throw your opponent off guard.
Just to throw him off.
Law number 4. Always say less than necessary. Due to his unpredictability, Louis XIV would have his courtiers tremble in fear when delivering bad news. He would say, "I shall see." Have them leave the room and either take action or decide to do nothing about the issue.
They went back to law number 4 from law 11. That's confusing, but man, didn't they just repeat that? Let's go.
But always with an intimidating silence. Only speak when you have something meaningful to say. Actions speak louder than words. Law number 13. Asking for help appealed to people's self-interest. In 433 BC, the Athenians found themselves in a favorable position. The Corcyraeans and the Corinthians were preparing for war. Both parties wanted to secure the help of the Athenians. The Corinthians chose to remind them of an existing debt. The Courtiers, on the other hand, spoke only of mutual interests, the combined force of their navy directed at Sparta, the Athenians allied with the Courtiers. In sales of any kind, pragmatic arguments will always trump emotional appeals. The past does not matter. Don't count on loyalty. Aim for win-win deals. Law number 14. Pose as a friend, work as a spy. Charles Maurice de Talleyrand-Périgord, French politician and mastermind behind Napoleon Bonaparte's defeat.
How many spies are in our community? How many are posing as friends and working as spies? It's a legitimate question.
Would hold himself back in conversation and get others to talk endlessly of themselves to the point of betraying their own thought, intent, and strategy. An interrogation disguised as a friendly chat, so subtle that the victim did not notice. Learn to judge a person's character by what they reveal of themselves, so that you can recognize a threat before it arises. Test people's honesty before you consider trusting them. Law number 15. Crush your enemy totally. A priest asked the dying Spanish statesman and general Ramon Maria Narvaez, "Does your excellency forgive all your enemies?" "I do not have to forgive my enemies," answered Narvaez. "I have had them all shot. The last resort, when words are no longer heard, and the enemy cannot possibly be reasoned with, the chances for peace at their lowest, the only option is total destruction. Merely wound the..."
So, law number 15 is kill all your enemies. Hijack 101, but I'm not giving you this so that you can take this and hijack somebody. I'm giving you this so you can know that they hijacking you and how they think about you, how they're using you, acting like they're friends with different intentions, but not revealing all their intentions. And right at the perfect time, they crushed their enemy totally. They came over here with their Admiralty sea law. United States is water to them. And they crushed their enemy totally with multiple sorcery, multiple transactions, multiple confederacies and treaties. This is how they always will think.
Enemy, he will recover and show no mercy in turn.
No mercy.
Law number 16. Use absence to increase respect and honor. A man said to a dervish, "Why do I not see you more often?" The dervish replied, "Because the words, 'Why have you not been to see me?' are sweeter to my ear than the words, 'Why have you come again?'" Molayami, quoted in Idries Shaw's Caravan of Dreams, 1968. Give people time to miss you by robbing them of your presence. It's when we lose something that we discover how valuable it had been to us. On your return, you will be appreciated all the more.
Playing games.
Law number 17. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Once Pablo Picasso had become a recognized artist, others would assume that whatever action he took must have been calculated. The art dealer Paul Rosenberg was confused when one day Picasso told him they would no longer work together. Rosenberg couldn't find out why and offered him a much better deal. The unpredictable is terrifying. When you don't know what to expect, you cannot prepare properly. You can't devise a clever plan because you're in the dark. Put others in such a position when negotiating. Law number 18. Isolation is dangerous. The more you are isolated, the easier it is to deceive you. You lose touch with reality. When someone is urging you to cut friends and family out of your life, realize that they want to control and influence you all by themselves. Whether they do this consciously or unconsciously.
Defeasy?
It is malicious. Be careful in cutting yourself off from others for too long. Introverted or not, you may cause yourself great harm psychologically by pushing others away from you. Law number 19. Do not offend the wrong person. Muhammad, the Shah of Khwarezm and Inalchik, had beheaded Genghis Khan's messengers who had come in peace with great gifts and offerings. The Khan declared war, seized the enemy's capital, and had Inalchik killed, quote, by having molten silver poured into his eyes and ears. Later, Genghis Khan seized Samarkand, bringing his brutal conquest of Muhammad's vast empire to an end. What would have become of Adolf Hitler had he been given the chance of becoming an artist? Perhaps history would be very different. Avoid insulting others. You do not know who you are dealing with. Even
never know who you're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? You never know. But yeah, they say these things and then they do the opposite. It's their duplicity.
though, we live in a time where everyone is offended, and the level of political correctness borders on absolute madness. Law number 20. Do not commit to anyone. Alcibiades, Greek soldier and statesman, found himself courted by the Athenians and the Spartans because he had influence on the Persians, and honored by the Persians because he had influence over the Greek city-states. Instead of committing to one side, he played all of them in his favor. Committing to someone is like handing yourself over to them. It means more obligations and less control. Law number 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Socrates said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." He didn't actually believe of himself that he did not know anything. It was his way of disarming people. Sometimes you have to play dumb so that the other lets his guard down. Being openly smart is foolish.
Or maybe he knew that the more he learned, the less he actually knew. So you see, they keep trying to hijack us. We're getting the babies out. There's even babies in here. And hijack one-on-one's mind and the mind of a hijack.
Being openly foolish is smart. Law number 22. Surrender tactic. Transform weakness into power. The Melians were prompted to surrender, but declined the Athenians' offer. Despite their alliance, the Spartans did not come to the rescue. Melos was conquered and their population slaughtered and sold into slavery. To quote Cardinal de Retz, "Weak people never give way when they ought to. Avoid weakness, but when you find yourself in a weak spot, choose to fight another day. You will lose the current battle, but the war is not over." Law number 23. Concentrate your forces. The greater an empire's territories, the more vulnerability. Great lands need strong borders. Else they may be overrun by another barbarian tribe, as seen with the collapse of Rome. Your armies are strongest when forged together. Divide them, and they may not be able to protect the empire from an invasion. Dedicate your complete focus to one front, using every resource at your disposal, and all of your energy to master your craft through total immersion. Law number 24. Play the perfect courtier. One cannot spell courtiership without Charles Maurice de Talleyrand-Périgord, the man who brought down Napoleon Bonaparte, master of the battlefield, with extreme subtlety. You are a courtier, or courtier, whether you like it or not. You must play the game of power, so you might as well choose to be good at it. The perfect courtier obeys his masters, but shines in his own light. He is not powerless, doesn't trust, but appears trustful. Doesn't talk much, but finds the right words and the right timing when he does. Everyone likes him. He is charming, witty, and helpful. He appears to be neutral, a paragon of honesty and fairness. He always has a genuine smile on his face, and we don't doubt his intentions for 1 second. Although he is a great talent, we do not feel threatened by him. We seek him as an ally. This way, the perfect courtier holds more power than the king himself without the dangers of that position. As we target the highest authorities, he's in the shadows observing the current state of the chessboard. Pieces may fall and be sacrificed on both ends, but he is winning regardless. Learn the art of courtiership. Law number 25. Recreate yourself. Others will call you what they think you are, or what they think they see in you. It's all superficial. Every now and again you'll receive a genuine compliment. But your parents, friends, society, even your government, expects you to be someone or something else. It's important that you choose to be whatever you want to be, and that you feel free to change whenever you like.
I mean, really, are they just drawing demons? Just to let you know that this is Hijack 101?
Have the freedom to dismiss the opinions of others, even to put on a good show like Gaius Julius Caesar. The world is your stage. It's up to you what role you want to play. Think of life like a book, and you're writing it. You're the main character, so act like it. Law number 26. Keep your hands clean. As written in Niccolò Machiavelli's letter to the prince, Cesare Borgia was using Ramiro di Orco as a tool to take gruesome action against all of his enemies. In the end, he used him as a scapegoat, put the full blame on di Orco, and threw lavish banquets for the common folk, presenting not only his clean slate, but positive change. It is the ultimate act of betrayal, to have someone's back only to find out they've been using you this whole time.
Wow, the ultimate act of betrayal, but it's their law. So betraying is their law. Betrayal is their law. So they keep their hands clean.
Avoid falling into the trap of being someone's cat's paw, or scapegoat. Law number 27. Play on people's need to believe. There are two different types of people in the world. Those who want to know, and those who want to believe. Friedrich Nietzsche. We strive to find meaning in a world full of formless chaos. Hence, most of us resort to the comfort of believing in unproven divine entities. Your quest for answers and your need to belong is used against you, whether for your recruitment as a mindless disciple or your loyal customership for a particular brand. Christopher Hitchens wrote, "Beware the irrational, however seductive. Shun the transcendent, and all who invite you to subordinate or annihilate yourself." End quote. If someone claims to have all the answers, they are full of shit. Fall prey to them, and all you are doing is beware the irrational, however seductive. Shun the transcendent, to find meaning in a world full of formless chaos.
Play on people's need to believe, and this is your religion. This is, you know what I'm saying, the manipulation that's out there, man, the hijack that we're dodging. Playing on people's need to believe, rather than those that want to know. And that's why we always keep surfing the wave of those that want to know, to keep digging, to never say, oh, that's it. To be comfortable with developing a theory, a thought, a hypothesis, whatever you call it, a wave to surf, and keep broadening, keep growing, and going in the direction that you're being pulled in. And it's no fight, but those that are sovereign and free to choose which wave to surf, we seem to be going the same way. Beyond our need to believe, it's our need to know.
Yes. Hence, most of us resort to the comfort of believing in unproven divine entities. Your quest for answers and your need to belong is used against you.
So instead of believing in, oh, the unproven, whatever's above the barrier, it's an entity that you can't trust. So believe in me, believe in my law, right? Believe in my sea law, my Admiralty law. Believe in this, believe in that, believe in this idol, believe in that power. Don't possibly believe in the energy that creates all of that what you call nature, all that what you call natural and sovereign and beautiful and pristine, and those that are from it, those that are Adama, from the earth. So we died in the hijack, but we interested, man. We interested. How many more babies do you got in this bathwater?
Whether for your recruitment as a mindless disciple or your loyal customership for a particular brand, Christopher Hitchens wrote, "Beware the irrational, however seductive. Shun the transcendent, and all who invite you to subordinate or annihilate yourself." End quote. If someone claims to have all the answers, they are full of shit. Fall prey to them, and all you are doing is giving more power to those who don't have your best interest at heart. You cannot let others think for you. If something doesn't make sense to you, perhaps like right now, feel free to dismiss it, but consider doing so on your own behalf. Law number 28. Enter action with boldness. If you're confident enough to play the role of Monsieur Lustig, one of the greatest con artists in history, selling the Eiffel Tower to greedy scrap metal business owners looking to make a fortune overnight for millions of dollars, not once but twice, one thing is crystal clear. You're not playing around. You don't hesitate, and your moves have a high rate of success, be that in seduction, strategy, or power games. There's that one split second before a box fight where Mike Tyson's opponent will flinch and break eye contact. He already knows he's beaten. There's that scene where Marco Polo and Kublai Khan stare down a wolf. It's hesitation versus boldness. In order to be fearless, you need courage. Be bold. Law number 29. Plan all the way to the end. Excerpt from the book. The gods on Mount Olympus, looking down on human actions from the clouds, they see in advance the endings of all great dreams that lead to disaster and tragedy, and they laugh at our inability to see beyond the moment, and at how we delude ourselves.
The gods of Mount Olympus. So now let's just give one to our fallen angels. Plan all the way to the end. Have they planned all the way to the end? Are we witnessing their plan? And which plan is reality and which plan is illusion? That which they call unproven. So what's their proven plan? Where are you going to exist? In the illusion or reality? Choose up.
Before you take action, consider the possible outcomes and consequences. Calculate the risk, then execute if it's worth doing. However, as time goes on, things reform, and it would be foolish to stick to a plan that ignores change. Law number 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Harry Houdini made his stunt performances look like they were a walk in the park, a piece of cake, as easy as stealing a child's lollipop. No one saw just how much work, preparation, and practice went into every piece of the puzzle. This illusion we call magic. Make it look like it was improvised, made up on the spot, and it will seem genuine. Boast how much work went into something, and its natural allure, the magic, is gone. Law number 31. Get others to play with the cards you deal. Ivan the Terrible let Russia choose between him as their Tsar or total destruction from its enemies, the Boyars. He made them see that they could only possibly be protected by him. It wasn't really a choice, and the Russians probably had other options that they were unaware of. They begged him to come back to the capital and lead them. This was what he wanted all along. People like to think they have a choice. Present them options that will work for you either way. This is the norm in elections, and anything of real importance. Just like Houdini's performance, it is an illusion. Law number 32. People's need to believe and people's fantasies. There isn't a big difference. Il Brigadino was an alchemist. People believed he could turn objects like wood into gold. Ironically, the only gold he ever made was given to him by the people who wanted him to multiply it. And others started to learn and practice alchemy. Stop clicking on how to make $1 million overnight type clickbait. Stop buying 6-minute ab workout programs, and stop going to the 7 steps on how to pull hot chicks within hours event, and get real. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Law number 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Cardinal Richelieu would find out the weaknesses of everyone around him, then worked on it by being useful to them until they were of no use to him. One by one, he worked his way up to the king, who at the time was a mere child. Know the weak spots of your opponents, the crack in their defense, and you will know what to work with when you need it. In reverse, do not betray your own weaknesses. Law number 34. Be royal in your own fashion. Act like a king. Christopher Columbus did not accept his low standing in the world he was born. He recreated his family tree, married into nobility, and peddled with kings. Now, unless he was mad, people thought, there must be valid reasons behind his bold requests. He must be legitimate. Ask for less, receive less. What you tolerate is what you end up with. Do not think lowly of yourself. You're a king in your own right.
Oh, he's a king, he's a prophet, he's a king, he's a prophet. Illusion or reality.
A queen in your own right. Princes and princesses are no good today. Law number 35. Master the art of timing. Joseph Fouché was switching sides whenever he sensed danger. His biography is riddled with nigh impossible escapes from death. He did not deem it necessary to be loyal to disloyal men. Say what you want of his attitude, but he certainly knew when to act and when to lay low. With time comes change. It is important to not only know how to adapt, but at what exact moment for maximum effect. Too fast and you're a traitor. Too late and you're imitating the others. In any case, learn to use time to your advantage. Law number 36. Disdain things you cannot have. King Henry VIII of England ignored his wife Catherine of Aragon for denying him a son. With Thomas Cromwell on his side, he devised a clever plan to marry Anne Boleyn. When you ignore someone, they cannot argue with you. They cannot influence you. You're out of reach and they can't do anything about it. If there is something you cannot and will never have, it is best to push it aside with discontent. Law 37. Create compelling spectacles. Dr. Weisleder healed his patients with the mere energy of moonlight. Why was this obvious scam so successful? Well, people didn't have the internet back then, but they also believed it was too spectacular to be fraud. The grandiosity, the associated status, rich and famous personalities were waiting in line to be healed and healed again. Using symbols as powerful as the moon and the very absence of explanation let people fill in the logical gaps all by themselves. If everyone believes it, it must be true. Mark Twain wrote, "Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect." Law 38. Think as you like, but behave like others. 478 BC, the fearless and experienced warrior Pausanias and his Greek troops captured part of the Persian Empire. Being the overseer of these lands went to his head, and he began acting rather strangely, even for Pausanias. He spoke ill of his own people. Feeling and showing superiority breeds hate. His god complex and constant need to stand out had him killed in the end. You want to fit in, whether you share common beliefs or not. Being better or different in any way just causes trouble through other people's envy and disdain. They'll ostracize you from the group and slander your reputation. How much money do you make? About 70% of whatever they make. Law 39. Stir up waters to catch fish. This is the good old lay a trap with bait and wait. Monkey see, monkey do. The spider web. Mice desire cheese so much, they won't even see the obvious construction around it. When you know your enemies and their weaknesses, you know what they react to, and you use this knowledge against them. Create a false alarm. They'll make a run to save what they hold so dearly and weaken themselves by exposing their flank. That's where you hit them. That's certainly where they will hit you if you fall for it. Keep yourself from being reactive. All that rage, blinding emotions, fear, desire, it makes you predictable and it makes you weak. Don't be impulsive. Law 40. Despise the free lunch. Louis XIV had an eagle eye for the strategic power of money. He would gift paintings of great value to people who didn't like him very much, until then. This way, he got nobility, the keys to power, on his side. At the same time, he increased operational costs for the aristocrats who wanted him gone. It's ingenious. He took money from his enemies and gave it to his new friends. 2 birds with 1 stone. This is one of my favorite laws because it states that cheap misers miss out on opportunities. It pays to be generous, and it pays not to accept free gifts. What is the return of investment on paying for someone's coffee? You sit down at Starbucks with an influential, connected, and experienced entrepreneur. You get to talk to him for 10 minutes, ask his advice, learn from his mistakes. I don't care if the coffee costs $50, I'm paying because there is a lot of upside. Law 41. Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Alexander the Great's father had set the standard of achievement very high. Alexander wasn't going to be content in his father's shadow. He wasn't going to rest on his father's and later on his own laurels. When Alexander saw the breadth of his domain, he wept, for there were no more worlds to conquer. Now, imagine if Alexander the Great had had a son who wanted to be a conqueror. That he would pale in comparison is an understatement. Not a soul would have attributed his success to him, for he'd achieve everything on the shoulders of his father. Don't make it your life's task to be better at being someone else. Instead, go your own way. Unapologetically, be your best self. Law 42. Strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Cut the snake at the head. What is an army without its generals? Without leadership? Whole empires have been secured off of conscientious leaders with iron willpower and vision. Take them away, and much like Alexander's empire after his death, they break apart and crumble, turning on each other, defecting and deserting.
This is what they've done to us.
Often the glue that sticks everything together consists of a few key people at the top in any kind of organization, any kind of social group or hierarchy. Do with this information what you will.
But they can't do that when the Creator is our existence, is our power, is our king, is our everything. They can't cut off the Creator. We have to cut off the Creator. Wow.
Law 43. Work on the heart and mind of others. October of 1793, the French Revolution declared the end of the monarchy. Marie Antoinette knelt at the guillotine, for she never cared about the people's opinion of her as their queen. She thought herself above the common folk. Pampered and disgustingly narcissistic, she paid the price, never learning from her mistakes. You should influence people and win friends, as Dale Carnegie suggests. It is more than beneficial to be recognized for your kindness and helpful demeanor. Be agreeable or face the consequences of being indifferent. Be humble or be humbled. Law 44. Disarm and infuriate with the mirror effect. Alcibiades charmed the Athenians, got accused of profaning sacred statues and fled. Then charmed the Spartans, impregnated the king's wife and fled. Then charmed the Persians and helped Athens win their war against Sparta. They welcomed him back with open arms. Wherever Alcibiades went, whoever he had to deal with, he would leave behind his own values and appear to share the values of his victims. No one could resist a man who not only concurred with them, but also admired their ways of living, seeming to be one of their own. You like people who like you, who are like you. Match people's energy, speak their language, eat their food, find common grounds, and even envious people will drop their preconceived notions about you.
How to be
Law
fake.
45. Preach change, but never reform quickly.
Politicians.
Change is imperative, but human beings love the comfort familiarity provides. The unknown, disorder, and chaos are very disruptive and undesirable to us, even when it is for the better. Hence, we need small, incremental changes that build over a long period of time, allowing everyone to adjust at a comfortable pace. You are moving things in the right direction, while
Turn the fire up, turn the pot up on the frog slowly, and they'll never jump out. That's their rule against you. Hijack 101.
avoiding stirring up too much anxiety and dissent. Change things gradually, one step at a time, dragging the voluntary rest of us with you.
Wow.
Law
Jump out the pot,
46.
jump out the pot.
Never appear too perfect. It takes great talent and skill to conceal one's talent and skill. La Rochefoucauld. If you have been paying attention, you will have noticed that a lot of these power plays revolve around the master and the student or slave, domination and submission, superiority or authority and inferiority, ego, pride, arrogance, and envy, jealousy, hatred. It's a very vicious and ultimately destructive cycle. Everyone wants to be the king. No one wants to be the pawn. Me, I don't want to be a pawn, but I don't want to be the king either. I don't want to envy nor be envied. I want to be the faceless man behind the throne. I don't want to be on the chessboard. I don't want to be a visible target. But I still want to win at the game of power, no matter what side loses. Law.
Our Creator reigns, and we are priests of the kingdom, and we better appear perfect, and we better be perfect, and we better strive for perfection in honor of our Creator. That's how we choose up. Die to
7.
hijack.
In victory, learn when to stop. In 1751, Madame de Pompadour found herself unable to satisfy Louis XV's lust. To hold on to her privileged position, she arranged younger, prettier women to keep the king happy. This was a loss, for she had to swallow her pride and share Louis with others. They, however, could not compete with her charm, talents, taste, and flawless sense for fashion. Her reign as mistress had lasted an unprecedented 20 years. Don't push too far or you risk losing it all. Know when to take a loss and move on. Law 48. Assume formlessness. The Spartans, the most powerful infantry the world had ever seen at the time, lost the war with Athens, for they were outnumbered and unwilling to change their views. They did not adapt to circumstance. They did not build walls. They did not want to conquer new lands, nor engage in trade, for gold gave rise to corruption. Meanwhile, Athens was thriving through constant reform. Sparta fell behind and collapsed. Don't fight change. When you catch yourself in the futile attempt to resist a new order, remind yourself that you not only missed the opportunity to predict it, but to adapt to it in time. You have to be anti-fragile. As Bruce Lee said, and this is the closing statement, you must be shapeless, formless, like water. When you pour water in a cup, it becomes the cup. When you pour water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. When you pour water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can drip and it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Be water, my friend. Why? 7. This is the 48 laws of hijack power. We extract the water. We extract the pure water. To be formless, to move, to be the wave. Hope you've enjoyed it. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful week. And be